Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This is a happy day, so it's really great to see you. My name is Carol Rose. I'm the Executive Director at the ACLU of Massachusetts. And on behalf of the ACLU and the Commonwealth, we are overjoyed that Rümeysa is here with us, and we're so happy to welcome her back to Massachusetts. So welcome home, Rümeysa.
Thank you so much.
You know, we know that the fight to protect and preserve our democracy requires all of us to do our job. And Rümeysa's release makes clear that we all have a crucial role to play in saving our democracy. Her bravery and spirit, including her willingness to speak out on behalf of other people who are in the detention center, has sparked something in all of us. Her courage is contagious. And we've seen the courage of Rümeysa's lawyers and her many advocates who worked without rest to secure Rümeysa's freedom. And I can attest that it didn't matter what time it was, whether it was 6 a.m. or 10 p.m. or even 4:37 a.m. when one of the briefs was filed. They were on the case. Rümeysa's legal team, federal and immigration, includes Masa Kambabi, who you're going to hear from in a few minutes, attorneys from the National ACLU, the ACLU of Massachusetts, including Legal Director Jesse Rossman, you'll hear from shortly, ACLU of Vermont, the Clear Legal Clinic at CUNY, and the law firm of Emery, Shelley, Bickerhoff, Abdi, Ward, and Maisel LLP. Together, your courage has shown through 24/7, and we are grateful to all of the advocates. You know, the courts and the judges, too, have shown great courage, from judges here in Massachusetts to Vermont, to the Second Circuit in New York and beyond. They have checked unlawful executive action and have defended the rule of law. We also see courage in the press, and we salute your role in keeping the public informed of Rümeysa's arrest, of the conditions of her detention, of these complex legal issues, and the depth and support and love and courage shown by her friends from the Tufts community and from the Turkish mission. By reporting on these stories, you inspire the American people to take action, and they have done so. The American people have flooded the streets of Somerville and Boston and Burlington, New York, chanting, "Free Rümeysa." We can see that courage truly is contagious. And how fortunate we are here in Massachusetts also to gain inspiration and courage from our elected leaders. We've seen the courage of our Massachusetts delegation. Senator Markey, Congresswoman Presley, Congressman McGovern, they flew down to Louisiana to bear witness on our behalf and to let Rümeysa and the rest of the world know that none of us will stop until she is free and until all people are free. And now I'm honored to introduce a man who understands and humbly wields the power of his position and uses it every day to protect the people in our Commonwealth and to ensure justice and liberty for all people throughout Massachusetts, the nation, and the world. U.S. Senator Ed Markey.
Thank you, Carol, and God bless the ACLU and all the work that your lawyers did. God bless you, Mom. God bless you, Jimmy. She's such a powerful voice of justice. Just lawyers stepped up. They took on this case and they set an incredibly important historical precedent. And I'm here with Ian Presley, who is justice, no matter where she is, and Congressman McGovern is with us this evening, but equally committed to human rights and protecting against their violations, no matter where he is, no matter what he does. And he really is so happy with these and you, Jesse Rossman, and everyone here, but especially to you, Rümeysa. Today is a tremendous day as we welcome you back, Rümeysa. You have made millions and millions of people across our country so proud of the way you have fought, you have resisted, you have stood up to injustice. And today is a great day of celebration for millions of people who had your back, and an example to all Americans to stand up for people who are suffering from injustice. Even amidst all of that injustice, today is a day of joy because of your release. And that federal district court judge in Vermont, it ordered that release. And the joy that comes from welcoming a friend and a loved one home, that joy comes from a moment here in the springtime. The joy that comes from a hard-fought victory in a fight for what is right. After talking with Rümeysa down in Louisiana and here this evening, I feel such joy. And it's from her joy and her strength that she is now an inspiration to millions of others across our country and across the world as well, because the world look at this case. Yesterday, that federal district court judge did order the release of Rümeysa immediately. It's a victory for Rümeysa. It's a victory for justice. It's a victory for our democracy. I had the privilege with Ayanna and Jim last month to meet with Rümeysa. We visited her at the ICE detention center in rural Louisiana, more than 1,500 miles away from the streets of Somerville, where she was whisked off of the streets and where she was detained for 45 days. 45 days of wrongful imprisonment in the United States of America in 2025, because she should have never been abducted from the streets of Somerville by masked agents with no explanation. She should have never been taken out of Massachusetts, where at each step of her ordeal, from Massachusetts to New Hampshire to Georgia to Vermont to Louisiana, she was denied requests to contact her lawyers. She should have never had to suffer multiple and worsening asthma attacks while locked away in detention, even yesterday, when she suffered an attack of asthma at her bail hearing. And at that bail hearing, the government did not provide a single shred of evidence that she presents a danger to the community or a danger to the United States of America. One shred of evidence. And as the court itself noted, the government has not provided any evidence of Rümeysa's wrongdoing except for an op-ed in the Tufts Daily newspaper. That's the full extent of the evidence against Rümeysa. As the court recognized yesterday, she was continually kept in detention, and that was chilling the speech of millions of other people in our country who are not citizens. And really, her case affects every one of us, citizens as well. Freedom of speech and the right of due process are not suggestions in our country. They are fundamental rights. The First Amendment right of free speech is not expendable. Due process under the Fifth Amendment is not expendable. These constitutional rights are indispensable. That is what Rümeysa's case says to the rest of our country. Let us not be fooled into thinking that we are different from Rümeysa, that what she has had to endure could never happen to any of the rest of us. Her rights to free speech and due process are everyone's rights. Everyone's rights. We all share in those rights, which is why this homecoming is only the beginning of the fight. We must now all take up in the name of all of our freedoms, not only for Rümeysa, but for every family, for every neighbor, for everyone who wishes to ensure that they can live free. And let us remember that hundreds of women are still being detained in that facility. The first thing that Rümeysa said to us is, Don't forget the other hundreds of women back in that detention center in Louisiana who do not know what they are charged with, who do not know what their rights are. Rümeysa's first instinct was not to talk about her, but to talk about all those women who have still not had their rights protected. That's who Rümeysa is. She's courageous. She's an inspiration. And we will not forget those other women, not just there in Louisiana, but all across the country. And men as well, who are right now having their constitutional rights be absolutely compromised. That's who Rümeysa is. She wants us in her to fight for them, and we will. And so that's really what today is all about. It's about ensuring that we fight against those awful conditions that those women are still suffering from. They are kept from adequate health care. They are kept from adequate nutrition, from the dignity of humane existence, of women separated from their babies and their children, women held at a disproportionate rate who are not being given access to the mental health, substance abuse, and trauma treatment that they need. We commit to ending those conditions for this. And we will fight against this scourge of mass incarceration without charges being made right now in our country against so many people. This is what our challenge is, and Rümeysa has raised it. So we start here in Massachusetts. We're the birthplace of freedom. It started 250 years ago, and we're going to continue that fight, where she can return to her studies and to make a positive change in her community, in the lives of those around her. And I speak for everyone here when I say, look, we will continue to have the race back, and we will continue to stand up for the constitutional rights, for our democracy, and for the rule of law in our nation. And Rümeysa, you are going to be someone who is going to ultimately help our country understand what we stand. That's what you've been doing for the last 45 years, and I think it's going to last for the rest of the term of Donald Trump. You are going to become an absolute symbol of what we must fight to protect. And there is no greater pleasure than Ayanna Presley. She is just an absolute warrior for justice. Every single day, it was my honor to travel with her to Louisiana. It was my honor to work with her every single day in the United States Congress.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your ongoing partnership on so many issues of consequence. In particular, we've been shoulder to shoulder in the work of oversight of our carceral settings, our prisons, our jails, our detention facilities. And before I get started, I do just again want to reiterate that if you care about mass incarceration, you should care about mass deportation. If you care about mass deportation, you should care about mass incarceration. This is not only the grave injustice that Rümeysa, Mahmoud, Mosen, and many more have experienced, not only inhumane and cruel, but incredibly profitable. These are facilities owned by corporations, and the same way that those private prisons benefit from mass incarceration. These private detention centers, facilities benefit from mass deportation and incarceration. So I did just want to name that. You know, y'all, I don't know if I can stick to my remarks here because I'm just overwhelmed. One, Rümeysa's home, and two, the Celtics won. But, you know, seriously, just bringing a little levity because we're long overdue for some joy. The second I saw Rümeysa, I just exclaimed loudly, "My sister." I felt an immediate kinship with her, and as we approach Mother's Day, it is important that, and I think the public outcry, the rally has been a testament to the fact that we see Rümeysa as our sister. We see Rümeysa as our daughter. And that is, in fact, how a community should rally and see one another when a harm is done to anyone. Because we are one human family, and our destinies are truly tied. I was also excited to be able to gift Rümeysa with a polished stone with the word hope engraved that I have been carrying for weeks. I had 2 stones with me when we went to rural Louisiana, and again, I thank Senator Markey for his steadfast leadership and partnership, my brother colleague Jim McGovern for journeying together to rural Louisiana, and I had a polished stone with the word courage engraved for Mahmoud, and a polished stone with the word hope engraved for Rümeysa. But ultimately, having visited Gina and the Brazil facilities, I decided not to give it to them because I was pretty sure it would be confiscated. So I was so excited to be able to place that in the palm of her hand today because I just wanted her to not lose hope and to know that we had come to see about her and we were going to continue to do that until she was freed. So today we come together to welcome home a beloved member of the Massachusetts 7th community, a brilliant scholar, a courageous advocate, and a survivor of a shameful injustice, Rümeysa Öztürk. Today marks a significant step forward and a victory for Rümeysa, a victory for due process, and a victory for our democracy. But it is also a somber day, and I know it is bittersweet for Rümeysa because Rümeysa should never have been abducted and ripped away from her community in Somerville in the first place. She should never have had her visa revoked. She should never have been transported almost 2,000 miles away to an ICE facility in rural Louisiana and subjected to squalid, inhumane conditions. She should never have suffered multiple asthma attacks and feared for her life so far away from home. Last year, Rümeysa authored an op-ed that centered the dignity and humanity of every person and was critical of her university's response to the crisis in Gaza. She exercised her fundamental First Amendment right. And citing nothing more than an op-ed, she was met with the full force of Donald Trump's authoritarian project: silenced, detained, and punished. Rümeysa, we work each morning. Since then, we've worked with you on our mind. Massachusetts did not forget about you for a minute. Your classmates and your neighbors peacefully gathered in the street, lawyers, elected officials, and people of good conscience from every walk of life spoke your name daily. Carol, Masa, Jesse ensured that this was the case. I also have the incredible good fortune to spend time with people who've been privileged enough to know Rümeysa, some for 5 years, some for 7 years, some for 10 years, and I was remarking that I'm jealous they've known her that long because true enough, she is courageous and a bright light, and all of it is contagious. But we refuse to be silent, sounding the alarm on this injustice and elevating your story time and again, Rümeysa. And yesterday, the federal court ordered Rümeysa released on bail. When we traveled to Louisiana last month to meet with Rümeysa, what we saw was unconscionable. Rümeysa was being denied proper medical care, left to suffer through intense and worsening asthma attacks without prescribed medications, forced to endure inadequate meals and religious accommodations, denied even basic necessities, and subjected to inhumane living conditions. Rümeysa, I shared upon our arrival when Senator Markey and Congressman McGovern and I landed here at Logan. Upon leaving here, I went right to Somerville for what had been a long scheduled town hall. And I shared with our Somerville community and the public what you told me of the constant fear, the trauma of being torn away from the community you love, the community that you have given so much to. But Rümeysa's spirit was unwavering and her light shone through for all of us to see. When you sat down with us, Rümeysa, you spoke first of the women detained alongside you. You carried with you in your heart and in neatly copious written notes, like the qualified researcher that you are, their stories, their fears, their urgent medical conditions, their worry that they had been abandoned. I was haunted by those words where Rümeysa said, the women here have cried aloud, has God forgotten about us? Has the world forgotten about us? Rümeysa's experience was not just an act of cruelty, it was a deliberate, coordinated attempt to intimidate, to instill fear, to send a chilling message to anyone who dares to speak out against injustice. I've said it before, Donald Trump is a dictator. Dictator seeks to silence dissenting voices, wants a citizenry that is ignorant and uninformed, a citizenry that is indifferent to the suffering of a neighbor, a citizenry that is inactive. Today, we're sending a message of our own to this White House. Your efforts to silence Rümeysa, to crush dissent, to undermine our fundamental rights are being rejected. Rümeysa, my sister, our sister, we welcome you home with open arms. We never forgot about you. You are loved, you are seen, and we will not rest until you are fully exonerated. Your visa is restored, and you are free to continue your studies and your service to our community. But let us also be clear, this fight is not over. Rümeysa is released on bail, but her deportation proceedings continue. So while we take stock of this important victory, made possible because of the dedicated people behind me and thousands more because of public outcry, we're clear-eyed about the work that remains. To everyone who has stood with Rümeysa, who has spoken out, who has joined in this fight in Congress, in the courts, and in community, thank you. We would not be here today if it weren't for you. Our work is not done, but we are stronger together. Throughout my time in public life, I've had the privilege and emotional honor throughout these years to say these two words to many people upon their return from prisons, jails, and detention facilities. Welcome home. And now we'll hear from Jesse Rümeisa.
Good evening. My name is Jessie Rossman. I'm the legal director at the ACLU of Massachusetts. I know I speak for everyone here when I say that there is no place that I would rather be than standing here right now next to Rümeysa, that she has finally come home. Yesterday, our witnesses testified that Rümeysa is truly irreplaceable to the Tufts community, and we are so grateful that she is back where she belongs. Of course, as you've heard, and as we have been saying for 6.5 weeks, this never should have happened in the first place. Rümeysa never should have been arrested. She never should have been whisked 1,300 miles away in a cloud of secrecy. She never should have been detained for 1 day, let alone 6.5 weeks. The government's unlawful actions have harmed Rümeysa, her family, her friends, and the entire Tufts community. It is a violence to rip someone away from her home for no reason, no justification, except for lawful expression of her beliefs. But the government's unconstitutional and targeted arrest and detention of Rümeysa also inflicted a broader harm. Through its actions, the government tried to send a message to everyone who was watching that if you express an opinion that the government disagrees with, you can face severe punishment, including the loss of your liberty. The government has sent this message not just through its actions towards Rümeysa, but through their actions of a broader policy to target arresting and detaining international students and academics who are advocating for Palestinian rights. In the face of this government retaliation, the federal courts are sending a very clear message right back. And that message is, this is not how we behave in this country. Yesterday, the federal judge in Rümeysa's case unambiguously stated that the government's arrest and detention of Rümeysa raised serious First Amendment and due process concerns. He repeated that multiple times from the bench, and it is critically important that all of us listen to that repetition. This confirmation that the First Amendment protects all of us in this country has been reflected in federal court decisions who in the last 2 weeks have released other people, both in Vermont court decisions and in Minnesota court decisions, who are similarly raising First Amendment and due process claims in their pending habeas petitions. Legal teams across the country will continue to fight for the release of those who remain detained, including Mahmoud Khalil and Dr. Suri. Rümeysa's legal team will continue to fight for her in her immigration case and in her federal court habeas petition. But I also want to place a call out to everyone who is watching this case. And I know that there were so many of you in the Commonwealth, across the country, and truly across the world. Please continue to stand up and speak out for the First Amendment. Free expression matters to all of us. It is the backbone of a free society. In order for the First Amendment to protect any one of us, it needs to protect every one of us. And that means that it is incumbent upon every single one of us to speak up and echo what we are hearing the federal courts say. And that is to say, we don't do this in this country. In this country, your right to express your beliefs is protected without fear of government punishment. I want to turn it over to another one of the attorneys on Rümeysa's case, Masa Kambata.
Good afternoon. We are heartened by Judge Sessions' strong decision in support of the rule of law and Rümeysa's release. We look forward to continuing to press her case, not only in immigration court, but in federal court, because that's the right thing to do. There have been enormous government resources expended on detaining someone unjustly, not only Rümeysa, but Mahmoud Khalil, Mohsen Madawi, who thankfully has been released, Dr. Suri, Bakal Kordia, and many others for their advocacy and speaking out against the genocide in Gaza. Rümeysa is an incredibly talented person, as you've all been getting to know her, an incredibly loving person, a peaceful person. She should never have been detained in the first place. I call on the government to focus their resources on actual threats to our nation, not talented international students, international scholars, immigrants who've been wrongly vilified and placed into detention facilities, essentially prisons. These immigrants make our country vibrant. They make us who we are, the great nation, and we must uphold the rule of law, freedom of speech, and freedom of expression. Rümeysa's release is an incredible victory for due process, for free speech, for all of us as Americans. You may be wondering, how does this affect me? This seems to only affect a small group of people, but that's not true. As the judge said in his decision yesterday, what has happened to her is a signal or a sign to millions and millions of people in this country working here, part of our communities, part of our families. There are people that work in our grocery stores, in our hospitals, in our banks. They're our neighbors, our loved ones. We must stand up for them and continue to defend not only their rights of free speech, but ultimately it's our right to free speech. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for all your support and love. In the most fortunate phase, I lost both my freedom and also my education during the crucial time for my doctoral studies. I am so excited to get back to my studies, community, friends, professors, and my students. My dear professor love my science here today, so I just want to highlight that and thank you. Thank to them. So with my incredible talented lawyers team, Massa and many more, I will continue my case in the court. I came to United States to pursue my graduate studies, learn and grow as a scholar, and also to contribute to development fields. My department, professors, students, has sent me so many beautiful sports, so much love, and comforting words. My union organized on behalf of me and other international students with so much effort, love, and care. I had so many lovely people sending me letters, comforting words again. So thank you all. And finally, I will also remind one more time, please don't forget about all these wonderful women in the immigration detention systems. I was so tired of witnessing crimes and pain that can be all preventable. Thank you.
We have time for a few questions for the attorneys or for the congresswoman.
Should international students refrain from expressing themselves, writing op-eds, joining in protests? Is this a dangerous time?
I think what we have seen time and again is the lawyers speaking out, the public speaking out, and the courts issuing decisions that continue to confirm that the First Amendment protects all of us in this country. It is not just citizens. And that's why it's important for all of us to continue to speak up on behalf of the First Amendment. We know that the rights in our Constitution are only as good as us continuing to defend them and advocate for them and to make sure that they are powerful and to protect all of us. And that's something that we are going to continue to do in the courts. But I really do want to continue to reiterate, this is not just happening in the courtroom. It is incredibly important, as Rümeysa said, for us to continue to fight in the courts as lawyers. But it is at least as important, if not even more important, for the public to continue to speak out, for the public to continue to exercise their free speech, and to continue to push back and say, this is not what we do here.
May I just say that J.D. Vance said recently, a Yale Law School graduate, that the courts just do what President Trump decides that they should do. Obviously, J.D. Vance missed the first week of constitutional law at Yale Law School because the first case you learned is the case of Marbury versus Madison. And that case says very simply, the courts determine what is the law. The courts determine what is constitutional. What has happened here in federal district court is that the law has been interpreted to say that Donald Trump and all of those agents of Donald Trump have exceeded their constitutional powers. And that's why Rümeysa is standing here right now. So two other foreign students and domestic students as well, students from the United States of America, they should have some hope that the courts are standing, that they're interpreting the First Amendment to give rights to all students, that they're interpreting the Fifth Amendment to say that due process is extended to every student in our country. So this is a huge victory for the ACLU, for all of Rümeysa's lawyers, and I think it's the beginning that can help to reduce some of the fear which has been injected into the student population all across our country. It's the beginning. There's still a big fight ahead, but I think today is very good news for the students who want to be able to.
And I'll just reiterate that, yes, building upon what my the colleagues behind me have offered, yes, the courts and our campuses, our college presidents, certainly, again, Donald Trump is someone who governs from a place of grievance and retribution politics, and so there are credible reasons to be fearful. That being said, it is more devastating to consider the fall of our country and our democracy and the death of the freedom to learn and an eroding of our constitutional rights if college presidents fold. So the courts have a role to play here because the actions of this administration are lawless, and we continue to lead with the best defensive strategy, which is litigation, which is the courts. But this is a fight for community, and this is a fight for campuses, and this is an appeal to our college presidents to defend every member of their communities, to practice their values, to defend the constitutional rights of each student, and also in doing so, to defend the freedom to learn.
I'll just add that the bar associations have stepped up. The American Bar Association, the Boston Bar Association, American Immigration Lawyers Association. We're all here to help support our communities, our students, our scholars. Every American deserves protection, and the bar associations are here.
To the legal team, the government says they revoked Rümeysa's student visa because they claimed she supported Hamas, which they quote said relatively Americans. Can you address that claim?
As the judge said, he gave the government weeks and weeks to present evidence, and they submitted nothing. In fact, the charges against her don't even talk about foreign policy, don't talk about Hamas. There's no comments related to that, and obviously they have no evidence, and we need to make sure that they're held accountable for that.
I just want to say, I mean, this has nothing to do with immigration. It has nothing to do with law and order. It has nothing to do with foreign policy. It has everything to do with power. That's it. And the reason why Senator Markey, myself, and Congressman McGovern traveled to rural Louisiana is because we want this administration to know, this hostile administration to know, in the midst of an active government takeover, that their abuses of power of the executive will not go unchecked. This is simply about silencing dissenting voices. And so this could be anyone. It could be anyone in Worcester. It could be anyone in Newark, New Jersey. It could be anyone, any place in this Commonwealth. If you are on the opposing side and worldview of this administration, it could be you for suffering a miscarriage. It could be you for reading a banned book. It could be you for practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion, all things that they seek to criminalize.
Article 1 of the Constitution created the Congress. Article 2 created the presidency. Article 3 created the federal district court system, including the Supreme Court. There is no Article 3.5, the Muskocracy, which allows Elon Musk and Doge and his White House allies to rumble through all of the constitutional protections that are built in to the original articles. And judgment after judgment by federal courts are upholding the original constitutional intent. Even as recently as today, a new court has ruled that Doge and Elon Musk just can't go through and arbitrarily destroy the Department of Education or the EPA or other agencies. They don't have that authority. So the courts are holding. They are blocking these decisions, including birthright citizenship, the right for Doge to get into the private information of all of the social security records, of tax records of every American. This is just one more example, but it's an important example. It's an important precedent because this goes to the First Amendment and the Fifth Amendment. This goes to the fundamental right of feeling free to speak out, to have a point of view, to disagree with the president, even if he thinks he's a dictator. He cannot squelch your right to be able to speak, even if you, the president, find it to be offensive. That's a huge victory today. But it's all part of a larger story of Trump, Doge, Elon Musk, all trying to act in a way which is fundamentally at odds with the Constitution as it is
Thank you. I will just add that it's really important to keep in mind that she was never charged with any crime. The government never produced any evidence that she had done anything wrong, that she had done anything anti-Semitic, that she had done anything supportive of any terrorist organization. There is simply nothing, zero, that the government has been able to produce, and they have been invited to do so. And in fact, because of good reporting, the Washington Post actually reported that there were efforts by the government to try to find things to introduce to the court, and they were unable to do so. But even those reports have not been forthcoming to the court. So the combination of secrecy Well, the secrecy just sort of shows there's simply no evidence to these allegations. So these are unsupported allegations that they have been given plenty of time to come forward and to prove and have been unable to do so at all. And I think that is the real answer to the question that you asked about. Is there any supporting evidence for this? And the answer is none. Thank you.
Carol, could you just speak to what concerns you may have regarding the Trump administration considering kind of a ban or limit habeas corpus and the implication that could have on cases like this, and this passing might try to, fight that if that happens?
Look, the Great Writ is one of the foundations that we have in this country about ensuring that when you are unlawfully detained, that you have a court, that you have a judge that is an independent judiciary, which is what Article III judges are. The immigration courts are under the same branch of government as the executive. They follow executive rules and orders. We heard that yesterday in federal court. It is Article III judges, federal judges, who have independent authority and responsibility to look at the constitutionality of someone's detention. It is core to who we are as a country, and everyone, I can promise you, standing here and who's out there fighting right now in the courts across this country, will ensure that we continue to fight for that right, to make sure that you have an independent authority that you can go to when you believe that the government has detained you and taken away your liberty in violation of the Constitution. That's who we are.
We're gonna do 2 more questions, and then we'll go to the House Daily.
For Senator Markey and Congresswoman Wesley, what are you doing sort of in the federal government and the Congress level to help support Rümeysa and others like her, as well as try to prevent other lawful things from happening?
Number one, we are having the back of everyone who is going to the courts. That's the first line of defense. And again, we thank the lawyers who are stepping up and doing this, many of them pro bono, to uphold the Constitution. We're also on the floor of Congress, and Congresswoman Presley and Congresswoman Governor, we're putting a spotlight. And in Rümeysa's case, we tried to put a clean light on her because she represents so many other thousands of people who right now are sitting behind bars without even knowing that the charges are against them. What we saw in Louisiana was Kafka-esque. We saw hundreds of women who don't even know what the charges are against them in the United States of America. This is not Stalin Russia. This is the United States of America right now. And so we're putting the spotlight on this, and we can feel the rallying of the American people behind it. And third, we're going to the streets. What happened here in Boston just 4 weeks ago, with 100,000 people coming out to Boston Common, the Boston City Hall Mall, it's happening all across the country. People are rising up the more that they can see these crimes against the Constitution that are being attempted to be perpetrated by the Trump administration. So that's our responsibility to continue to represent the birthplace of freedom, Massachusetts, where John Adams drafted the Constitution, drafted the Code of Liberty and Freedom, which is enshrined in the United States Constitution, because it's the basis of the Massachusetts Constitution that's drafted by John Adams. In fact, when he defended those British soldiers at the Boston Massacre, John Adams was trying to send a very strong message that everyone is entitled to due process. Everyone is entitled to have their rights protected. And that's what Congresswoman Presley and Congresswoman Governor and I are trying to do. We're trying to raise this message that Boston and Massachusetts has been sending for 250 years about the rights of everyone to have due process and the right of free speech. And we really gratified by the extent to which it is absolutely resonating increasingly across our country, even though there are people who may disagree with the words I spoke. No one should disagree with our right or anyone's rights to speak.
I associate myself with the words of my colleague, and we just simply add that, being fully transparent, given the chaotic nature, the hostile climate that we find ourselves in, any response that we have feels that it falls woefully short because the pain and the injustices are acute. And so they beg an immediate prescriptive fix, but we don't have one available to us. We are meeting lawlessness with the rule of law. And that is why we have to resist and reject at every turn Donald Trump's vision for this country. And that is not just the work of 200 plus Democrats in the House. That is the work of everyone, because we are not just trying to figure out how to weather the next 4 years. This fight, this moment, will determine the next 100 years for this country. So what I'm calling on all of us to practice is not patience, but stamina. We have to be vigilant and we have to summon the stamina for these fights. But if we acquiesce, or if we're complicit in our silence, or if we otherize who stands to be impacted by this, and please know this harm is coming for everyone. If you want to try to otherize and marginalize who this is happening to and who's going to be harmed, this harm is coming for everyone. This is about our collective. This is a fight for all of us. So we have to be vigilant, we have to practice stamina, and then we have to continue to daily engage those strategies of litigation, legislation, agitation, and mobilization. They're flooding the zone, we have to do the same. The rhetoric hits different, the policies hit different, we have to move differently and match their energy. They're flooding the zone, and so will we.
All right, last question, Boston Globe.
Hi, thank you so much for being here and speaking with us. I'm wondering if you'll talk about the overhead website for Rümeysa, both in the courts and school.
Thank you. So we have an upcoming immigration court hearing later this month where we will be presenting Rümeysa's case for what we believe and can document is the unlawful revocation of her visa and the termination of her CEDA status. As many of you have heard, the government not only terminated Rümeysa's CEDA status, her F1 status, but thousands and thousands of other students, and have stepped back because it was wrong. They did it without the authorization. We have never seen in our history of immigration law related to students where the government goes into the CEDA system and terminates a student's status on their own. There was never a policy for that. There was never a procedure for that. It was unlawful. And that needs to be corrected. It's the universities that welcome these students here and monitors their status. So we're going to be fighting that in immigration court because we know that we're on the right side of the law.
In the federal court proceedings, we heard testimony and we saw the documentary evidence that was submitted to the court from nearly 24 of Rümeysa's colleagues, the people that she studies alongside, the people that she learns from, the people that she is teaching, and how integral she is to that community. The judge heard that testimony. He read that testimony as a part of what his final statement was from the bench. He reiterated how clear it was that Rümeysa was core to the Tufts community and is contributing to her academic field in ways that benefits not just her and her education, although of course that is important, it is why she's here, but is benefiting the very field that she works in, which again is childhood development. Working to protect children, working to ensure that children are being raised in an environment where they feel safe and where they can positively contribute to those around them. And those are exactly the kinds of people that we want to come to this country and lift all of us up.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.